Today we have the opportunity to have with us Sarah Hallet, who's going to be talking to you about mental wellness, and in this time of pandemic as well, as we're with our kids now 24/7, and what a great opportunity to get to know our kids better, to talk about how we're approaching stress. Maybe our substance use is going up, maybe we're having more wine than we usually do. How do we approach the matter with our kids? So we're going to be talking about, as I said, youth substance use, mental health, and prevention. I'm just going to quickly introduce Sarah. Sarah is a clinical therapist with the Pine River Insititute.
Thank you for having me today.
I will jump right away to my first question and ask you, Sarah, is there a connection between mental health and substance use and or addictive behaviors, and how does this manifest in youth?
There's absolutely a connection between the two. It's very hard to separate them out. If you imagine mental wellness as a kind of scale, and on one hand, we're really fit and well and happy, and on the other hand, we could be really not very well or in hospital. And we're all on this continuum. So there isn't a measure where somebody is unwell and they're well. We all move along it according to the stresses in our lives. And essentially what happens is, if the amount of mental difficulty or stress in a youth's life outstrips their ability to be able to cope, then they're going to be looking for substances or something to ease the pain that they're in. And so very quickly, they find out that substances are great at numbing me out. I don't have to feel pain anymore. So if we scratch the surface of addiction, and this is true for adults as well as youth, we find people who are struggling with, for youth, identity. Where do I fit? How do I belong? My self-esteem, my anxiety, what if things are not going to be okay, depression, and of course trauma as well. And as I say, that's true for adults and it's true for youth, but I think for youth, their need to fit in and belong and find their identity is a real driver for confusion and pain. And of course for substances, they provide a very quick and what looks like an easy solution for them not to have to feel these painful feelings.
Thank you. So if we bring it back to this current funny context, how would we define self-medicating? Because we hear about that, but what do we define self-medicating is, and what symptoms or changes in behavior should parents be alert to? So we're saying that parents are spending a lot of time with their kids right now. Are there some things that they should be more in tune with and looking for if there's some concerns with their kids using substances or other addictive behavior?
For sure. I mean, the situation that we're all of us in is really pushing us all out of our usual structure and routine, even the way we're doing this call today. And so on that continuum that I spoke about, we're all being pushed much further towards anxiety and stress. And so everybody's stress levels are higher. And that's going to probably manifest in people that were being able to cope before, not feeling like they're coping so well. It occurs, James, you guys are really more aware than most about the uncertainty and how it affects people, and people are not good at uncertainty, and for most this really does increase their stress. And the very situation we're in is so uncertain, we have no real things that we can rely on and safety. So the key is, how do we manage this uncertainty? And for some, it brings about growth and resiliency. If they're not overwhelmed, they can use these difficult times to grow into themselves and feel like, I can address this stress, I'm doing well. But of course, on the other end of that, we have people who avoid, and self-medication becomes part of that. So self-medication is really when we try and alleviate feelings of pain or discomfort that we have by avoiding or numbing our feelings. And this can be in a small amount of time, not really too much of an issue. But given that we're all feeling so much more anxiety, then perhaps we're self-medicating a little bit more than usual. So too much self-medicating really can lead us along the road to addiction, because we come reliant on those ways to avoid and numb rather than using some skills to try and make us feel better. So that's really what self-medication is. And then the symptoms and changes of behavior, I would say parents could look for, I made a bit of a note of this, so increased irritability, disconnection from the family, binge watching Netflix, constantly on a cell phone, drinking too. No, actually, that's the parents. So I'm joking, of course, but the point is that we all do this change in behavior when we're anxious. We all go into these little patterns that we do to try and avoid. So we're looking for distress. Are your kids isolating? Are they not contacting you or talking to you? Be present. Like you mentioned, we have this great opportunity to connect with our kids in a way that we never could before. So are they with us? Are they conversing with us? Are they having food with us? Do we have a dialogue? How are we, spending our time? And being aware and present will be the biggest thing that you can do, because then you will notice differences in your child. Trust your gut feeling. If it feels different, it probably is. But don't be afraid of your kids being bored. Boredom can lead to a lot of creativity, and really even understanding the dynamics of that. Perhaps you can talk to your kids about using screens and cell phones so much really hypes us up, gives us a lot to look at. We're looking for stimulation all the time. So when we switch these things off, we can feel quite agitated. We're used to a lot of information being given to us very quickly. That's normal. That's usual. It can feel uncomfortable, and that's okay. Maybe we feel uncomfortable if we forget our cell phones or leave them behind somewhere. We're so used to having these things around us. So really not to worry about boredom, but just to try and take a little bit of time to connect with your kids. And then finally, I would say be careful in terms of self-medication and regarding your substance use. So be careful of the example you're setting. If you're casually saying, oh, I can't wait to get to the end of the day and have that glass of wine, I'm going to feel so much better. Inadvertently, you're communicating to your children that this is a great coping mechanism and you can't wait to use it. Well, they hear and see everything that we do, and they will do as we do, not as we say. So like you were referring to, if they see us doing these things, they're going to say, hey, how come that glass of wine's okay for you, but it's not okay for me? So it's not that it's a bad thing that we're necessarily self-medicating a little bit more as adults, but we need to be very careful about the example that we're setting to our kids and be open to the conversations if they challenge us.
Those are great points. I really like the fact that to not be afraid that our kids are going to be bored and not start panicking. And it can also be daunting as a parent to constantly be the entertainer in the house. They can handle it. But then, so that was a really good point. And being present and being aware and connecting and setting good examples, right? Being aware of the modeling that you're doing around your kids, around maybe alcohol consumption. So thank you. These are great points. So actually taking all these points and putting them into practice, once I'm aware of all of this and I'm present and I'm trying to connect, how should I approach my kid then on the subject of substance use and addictive behavior? So if I've noticed some things, or even if I don't, maybe if I want to just have an informed conversation around the subject, such as drug or alcohol use, or excessive screen time, or poor sleep schedule, how would you advise us to approach the matter with our kids?
That's a really good question. And of course, it really depends on who you are and your relationship with your children as well. So do what fits for you. I think there's nothing wrong if you feel uncertain about this world to say that to your children. I'm not really sure about everything, but I think that it would be great if it's something that we can talk about, normalize it. This is going to be part of your life, whether you see friends doing it, whether it's around you at your school. And I'm sure it's different from when I was a child. Acknowledge that we're not necessarily going to be experts for our children. I lead an addictive behaviors group at Pine River, and yesterday I spoke to that group and asked them this question. I thought it was a great way to get their input. And they pretty much said what I would have said, but maybe better than I said it, which is just, if you're coming and judging me and telling me that I'm doing these things wrong, then I'm really not going to listen to you. It's not as if they know that it's a good thing to do. They know it's not a good thing to do. But if you can come to me and maybe talk to me, find out what's going on in my life, find out how I'm feeling, then if you have that relationship with your child, then perhaps more anxious, again, normalizing that for them, saying, hey, you know, it's really anxiety provoking for everyone not being able to see their friends, not going to school. How are you feeling about that? Then we open the door to these conversations. Then when we do want to talk about a specific topic, it's not really odd that we suddenly start talking to our children. So you can lay a lot of groundwork by just having conversations about everything in your child's life. That way it's not odd. So that was one of the things they said. The other thing was to say, to be curious. Don't tell me how I should feel. Ask me. Ask me how I'm feeling. Ask me what I am doing. And maybe I have questions for you. Maybe you could sit down with your child and use some of the resources that Drugs Free Kids Canada has and say, hey, can we go through this together? Maybe we can learn about it. How do you feel about this information? I know how I feel about it. Bring them into the conversation. Let them know that you're willing and open to listen and hear what their points of view are. Because kids that feel heard, just like adults who feel heard or friends that feel heard, are far more likely to have these conversations with you. And then you continue to have an influence on your child in a way that's going to be so important if you do have this issue come up. Without a relationship, you really don't have a great deal to go. You can only tell them off. And that's really not going to do any of you very good at all. So that was really it. Try not to be super reactive. If they suddenly tell you, you know, I tried smoking weed last week. If you go up like a rocket and say, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. Okay, I just learned that I don't tell you those things. And if you're able to hold, and this is a very difficult thing, if you're able to breathe and hold and say nothing and just let them talk, afterwards you can go to your spouse, your friends and go, oh my goodness me. But in that moment, if you can hold with them and say, wow, I maybe don't know what to say right now, but I'm so glad you told me. Then you're going to build their openness to keep talking to you. And that is so important as you navigate these very difficult and choppy waters together.
Oh, so many valid points. Thanks. I love the ongoing conversation about being able to ask how they're doing. You know, in the previous answer, you were talking about being aware and present and connect. And I think it's so important to not just connect and not just, you know, fighting that urge to lecture when we find something that goes wrong. I think you've brought some very, very valid points. So one final question already, we're there. The final question is finding healthy ways to manage anxiety, as we said, and stress in a positive manner, and influencing your kids to do, to approach it in a positive way is very essential at this time. So would you have any suggestions to help families cope with this situation, like healthy ways to deal with stress and approaching it with our kids?
Yeah, again, you know, I would say it's a collaborative approach. I could give you a shopping list of self-care, exercise, structure, schedule, time with family, but it's going to some degree depend on the family. Whatever you do for yourself, if you can invite your children to do those things with you, then if they come along, it's going to be a really positive experience. So if you say, you know, I'm going to head out for a walk just now, I'm going to go walk around the block. Would you like to join me? We can, you know, check out and see what's going on in the world. And they don't have to come, but you're leaving the door open for them to connect with you, then that's something that you can maybe do together. If you go for a bike ride, if you are going to even watch just an episode of your favorite program, do you want to sit and join me? It's always nice to have your company. Let your children know that you actually enjoy spending time with them, that they're real people that you'd like to spend time with, rather than saying to them, hey, you know, you should get outside for exercise an hour a day. Okay, well, that's true. But whether they're going to do that or not when they're told to do it is a little bit difficult. So really, it's self-care for yourself, and inviting your children in is a win-win, because you're both decreasing the stress for yourself and you're building connection and modeling, I can take time out for myself. And the golden ticket, if you like, is that they actually enjoy doing something with you. And then you have the opportunity for great conversations, because most conversations with teens are done side by side in an activity. You're going to get a lot more from them just sitting in front of them, asking them for input. So I think anything that you can think of about getting outside, exercise schedules, Don't be afraid to enforce these boundaries. You can still say to your children, I think we need to get outside at least an hour a day. You know that's a positive mental health activity. Do it with them. That's going to be the best way to lead it along. And then everybody is benefiting rather than serving up as a prescription of the things we should do.
Thank you so much, Sarah. You've given us a lot of great tips and a lot of great things to think about. I would invite everybody, if you want more suggestions or more tools, to come on our website at drugfreekidscanada.org. There's a lot of tools and suggestions, but Sarah, you've been awesome, and it's been a pleasure talking to you today.